So I think we will get started. It's a few minutes after 1. I want to officially welcome all of you to the Stockbridge Library Association's online poetry series. This idea started back last April during Poetry Month. We thought it would be nice to bring poetry into the homes of the world that was on lockdown and quarantine. And we imagined a 4-week program. We are now in our 40th week and still going strong. Different poet each week. So we're really excited about the success of the program, and also very excited to have Cammy Thomas with us today to share her poetry with us. Cammy is the author of Cathedral of Wish, and this was her first book, which received the 2006 Norma Farber First Book Award from the Poetry Society of America. Her second book, Inscriptions, was published in 2014, and her third book, Tremors, is forthcoming this fall of 2021. Her poems have recently appeared in Compose, the Missouri Review, Off the Coast, Salamander, and Spillway, and in the anthology Poems in the Aftermath. A fellowship from the Ragdale Foundation helped her complete Inscriptions, and 2 of her poems were used as text in Far Past War, a choral work by her sister, composer Augusta Reed Thomas, who I think is with us today. Hello there. And this will be performed at the National Cathedral in Washington, D.C. sometime in 2021. Cammy grew up in Long Island, was educated primarily in California, receiving her BA and PhD from the University of California at Berkeley, and her MA from San Francisco State. And Cammy has taught literature and creative writing for many years and is joining us from Lexington, Massachusetts today, where she lives. Cammy, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much. I have to say, I find it unbelievable that I have actually published 3 books. I know that sounds like a silly thing, but it amazes me because it was a dream from when I was 15 and I just didn't think it would happen. So thanks to everybody, including most of the people on this call who have helped me get there. I wanted to thank you, Wendy, and also John Gillespie and everybody at the library for the program. I really appreciate it. And I want to, as I say, thank my friends and family and my fellow poets, some of whom are on here. And then also, Alan Shapiro, Gail Mazer, 2 of my incredible teachers. Thank you so much for everything, teaching and reading and everything. And also I have to thank my sister Dorothy, who has read every version of every poem since the beginning of time with an amazing amount of patience and fortitude. So, and there are many others have read a lot, but Dorothy has just been, she's read every version, she really has. So thank you. And thanks to everybody for coming. I really appreciate it. I'm gonna read from all of my books, kind of in a, just as I feel. And including the one that's going to be coming out in September from Four-Way. The books are really kind of, as I looked at them today all together, they're a family saga, which is inflected by the times. And so I'm going to focus on characters. I'm going to read a small group about each parent, a small group about my siblings, etc. A very important thing to say is that these poems are drawn from my life, but they're then transformed, hopefully, by my art. So they're not to be taken as strict autobiography, I'm saying. And any flaws in the facts are wholly mine and sometimes very deliberate. I mean, it's all true in a way. That's what I would say. So I'm going to begin with a poem that has to do with what it means to write about your family, the complications therein. I don't want to hurt anyone. And at the same time, I'm aware that I am, using other people's lives, my own versions of them. Oh, but wait, Wendy, we're supposed to be doing something else before I start reading, so go for it.
That's okay. If you want to launch, or we can
No,
have
that's
a
all right.
short
I forgot the
after
order of
you read.
operations. Go for it.
Okay, great. We usually start the sessions with a few questions just about your process as a poet. And the first question that we typically ask our poets is, what starts a poem for you? What is the seed that brings a poem forth? Is it, a phrase you hear on the street? Is it you make a decision to write about a particular theme? Or are you reflecting on something that has happened in your life? What starts it for you?
For me, I sort of back into it. If I sit down at the glaring screen or page, I get all tense and start sweating and nothing happens. But so I like to be watching a James Bond movie or something, and then have something occur to me out of the corner of my mind and write it down in the dark, or, it happens that way. Maybe there's a sound or something. Sometimes something just calls out for a poem, a certain smell, or I'm trying to think of something that has happened recently. Something really, sometimes you look out the window and you see a coyote in the middle of the street, or but I'd say it's accidental, and the more I plan for it, the worse it goes. So in a way, I do other things, and then I hope that little tendrils of lines and sounds come to me, and that I'll work on them later. And a lot of times I scribble and I throw it in a pile, and then later I find it and I go, wait, did I write that? I don't even remember where it started. So it's very random.
And can you come back to something like that? If you see a phrase that you don't recall where it came from, can you then use that as a jumping point?
Totally thrilled to have it. Yes. Excellent. Can't wait. So happy for whatever I'm given. It's the more conscientious and conscious I am, the harder it goes for me. It's almost about having to let go, because I keep a pretty tight ship, I run a tight ship in my mind. And so I like to let go. Great. And you know what? I'm sorry, I can't help saying there's this line from Robert Frost. It's something like, probably Lloyd or somebody can quote it perfectly, but it says something like a piece of ice on a hot stove, a poem rides on its own melting. So I'm not even sure exactly what that line means, but to me, it means that the poem has its own independent life. It rides on itself. And if I can just find a way to jumpstart it, then maybe it will carry me along.
Yeah, it's a great image. Thank you. So it has been quite a year or more. Our world has been turned upside down in so many different ways. How have the events of the past year informed or affected your writing process?
It's totally horrifying, the whole thing. And I guess one of the main things for me is that I have no concentration span. I mean, I thought, oh, good, I have to stay home. Now I can reread the Iliad. Not going to happen. Wish I could say it would. Just not happening at all. Lots of TV, lots of, I walk around outside pacing and thinking about how I'm going to go home and read the Iliad, and I still don't do it. I'm going to clean up that closet. I don't have any concentration. So in terms of my work, I guess I would say I just try to keep a little bit going. It's been all about generating new stuff rather than trying to fix anything. The book that's coming out, I was just kind of working on the last phase of when this happened. And so I felt like I was able to kind of keep myself organized. But since then, I have a lot of beginnings and a lot of drafts, and I just feel whatever you can get, that's great. In terms of that's sort of the way my work's been going. In terms of the material that I'm talking about, that's really interesting. I've had a lot of poets say to me, oh, don't write anything about the pandemic. 2 years from now, nobody's going to want to hear it. You know, skip that. It's boring. It will be boring. I know it's fascinating to you now, but really it's not going to last. And I got to take exception to that, because I feel this is a major event of our lifetime, actually, a kind of worldwide trauma. And there will be a lot written about it. And as is true with any gigantic worldwide trauma, a lot of the art that comes out of it probably won't be so fabulous. But still, it's there and it's happening. And I feel that the sense that I've had of being frightened for a year, I'm frightened every day, a lot. When the previous, as I think Biden refers to him as the former guy, when the former guy was in the White House, every day was a nightmare, you know, a kind of a disaster, more fear, more anxiety. And I feel it, I absolutely write about it because it's right in front of me. How can I not? But I also recognize that then you have to, you know, do that work of figuring out whether this is a real poem or not. You know, there's always a transition that must be made between the raw material and the art. So that's a big thing to think about. And it's sometimes hard to know the answer of what you created until some time has gone by. But yes, it's affected everything. And
Mm-hmm. You know, and on that theme, you said you have a lot of started material around. On the other end, how do you know when that started material is finished? When is a poem done for you? Is there a moment or a certain number of revisions or just a walking away? How do you know when a poem is done?
gosh, that varies so much, I think. Some things come out kind of as they're meant to be, and they say to me, I'm here, leave me alone. Some come in little dribs and drabs, some never make it. I think of, I wrote my dissertation about Alfred Lord Tennyson. He's a very dead poet these days, but I love his work. And Tennyson wrote for, I don't know, 80 years or something like that. And he was still tinkering with things in the 1880s that he had written in the 1830s. Sometimes he wrote a song in the 1830s, then he slipped it into a great big long poem 50 years later. And I just feel it's a great example. He's a great model to me because, you know, stuff lies around. You can use it or you can't. Sometimes it feels finished and sometimes it doesn't. I guess my real answer to your question is, it could be anything. It could be done or it could never be done. And as for when I know, I don't know. You know, most of the time I'm making a kind of sense. You know what it is? Sometimes you feel like you're killing it because you're working on it too long. It's like with an oil painting, I've heard, you know, I guess you could scrape oil off, but if you'd make a wrong watercolor move, you're dead. So I feel like you can overdo. And I never feel, oh my God, this is perfection. But sometimes I think you better not toy with it anymore or you're going to wreck it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. We would, of course, love to hear you read now.
Sorry.
And there's a few comments in the chat box that are interesting, thanking you for being so honest, and also somebody else, a kindred spirit, who also didn't get to the Iliad during the pandemic.
I'm sure there are a lot of us that fall into that category. All right, so of course, all of you remember everything I said before about thank you, and here's where we go. And I'm gonna jump right in and begin with this poem about stealing other people's lives for my work. I'm sorry, that puts it in a very negative way. The poem isn't that terrible. Okay. It's called Moth-Eaten Stage. I look out my window at night and see through black trees a river of light where the road should be. Down the river, my father riding a chestnut mare, and beside him my aunt astride with a flask full of gin, both their faces in flames, voices breaking the clouds, and the rest of the night so dark, no stars get in. They look at the bowl of the world and they rage at me, I who can tear them apart or let them ride. I, in my safe little room, can set them free or make them perform forever on that moth-eaten stage.
Mm.
So I'm going to do a little cluster of poems on my mom and my dad working through all of these books. And the first one is called Snake. Today, Mom comes outside. She's dry, but doesn't look well, wants us to stop talking. We discuss the weedy pond, having nothing left to offer except politeness. At the outdoor fireplace, marooned by stones, she scoops up something. Nothing to it, she says, as it writhes in the air, and we back away, admiring.
Mm.
After my mom died, her body went away. We hadn't seen her. And then we said we actually did want to see her. So they brought her back from New Jersey into Manhattan where she had died. And this poem's about that. Sweet broke down. My sweet broke down one. When you died, they removed you without saying goodbye. But I made them bring your body back before you were boxed and dropped in southern New Jersey for final burning. On East 28th Street, they draped a sheet over your cardboard coffin and showed us one last time. No powder and no lipstick. I was glad they hadn't dressed you up, but let you look pale and gone forever. We children touched your forehead cold as stone and saw your hair in spears as if just bathed. The lines like watercourses on your face. Your crooked mouth slightly open, a corner of one tooth, and behind it, black. French toast. My mother used to make it with eggs and milk and stale white bread, slid onto a plate with log cabin fake maple syrup. And I always wanted more. To disappear, what troubled me, the man under the moon, the man in our living room, make enough spitting bacon to forget the broken game boards, splintered bat, missing family car, his vanishings and sudden returns, smelling of other rooms, my mother's tears over the stove, her catchy, milky breath. Switching to the other parent. The title of the poem is a line from a poem by the Irish poet Evan Boland. From my father's heart I sprung. From my father's heart I sprung, never got my heart, searched the woods at night apart. He taught me how to hear a chord, shout out loud, never doubt the lonely word. When I learned to sing, he said, don't follow me, look for a dazzled, silent sea. I ride in sculpted armor red, girl with sword, blank eyes, winged helmet, pregnant head. The end of this poem takes an idea from Those Winter Sundays by Robert Hayden. I felt fierce love envelop. After wine and weeping in my father's cathedral of wish, magic cemetery of meaning, his fiery words sharpened at our spinning whetstone, lapidary disc in air. Meant to make me glorious, his arms banded me in our garden of scalding radishes. He fed the winter birds, and late at night, he cooked for me when I came home unkissed. How forgive the blows he gave to others? No logic to love's offices. Current. Though he ordered us not to, we played a game. Circle the room without touching the floor. Toe to table, heel to chair. Hang above grandma's Chinese rug, so thick it blinded the weavers. Pink peach blossoms on a death black ground. We crashed and splintered his precious chairs and tables. Lit with vodka, he shouted us down, his charge powering our hearts. What did we pray as years passed and the grid of wires shrank to a scorch? Our Father. He made a play we went to see, and like a play, it saw us too. He made us stand, recite our lines, until we saw no way to stop. We told each other of the myth he built for us of blood and stone. Our thoughts were not our own. We shivered under heavy manes, like horses running from a blast. The stars fast slid away, took their noise to other skies, left us here without the play. How could it be otherwise? I'm going to read a few about my siblings now, and I'm not going to identify them unless the poem does. And this one is about, well, it's dedicated to and about my sister Ellie, and it's called One Always Beside Us. Our middle sister sees our world until she unfurls us, waiting. Still in the beating, the weeping, she makes an opening, hoping. Bad burden to think, to say for all five, this is too much, that will do. Her eyes age even before she knows how to love, what to save. What grave withholding kept our father from her small, straight law? How help one who saw them coming, wouldn't bow? And this next one is about my brother Jim, and it has a movie in it some of you may have seen, which is the title of the poem, The Thing from Another World. My brother kept a sword by his bed after he saw the thing from another world. A huge humanoid space creature frozen under the ice. Thawed by Arctic scientists, the creature broke out of the lab, tried to kill everyone. Jim said a man could crawl into our bedroom from the porch roof, lay awake in the next bed, ready to draw his sword. The creature had swiped a paw off a husky. Under bright lights, the paw twisted, scraped. One night, woken by a noise, Jim pulled his sword from the scabbard, snuck into the hall. Lost in the dark, determined to save us, he turned, something rising in his throat, a piercing animal scream. Our father appeared in the dark. What are you? He said, a scared little girl? But Jim knew the creature was still there, clung to his heavy sword. It wasn't easy, frozen under the ice. Fairy tale. Peerless father drops his twins aged 10 alone in foreign woods, run-down cabin. Animals scratching in the walls, one drafty bed, side by side. They play in leaf litter, eat what he left them. Hot August sky, the sun creeps up. Boy climbs the ladder, dim attic, torn paper, hairless baby mice, pink paws like needles. Girl walks tearless, jumps to a hawk scream, a slither in leaves down an animal trail. Can't see the stars, dead leaf driveway, watch in the dusty. 3 days, then 4. Shoulder their hunger, hide in the cabin. Comes their father, strange woman beside him. The chain. Dorothy turned her hat in her dark fingers. I sipped. Or when Grandma marched with the suffragettes in London, the point is we're all activists, the women anyway, she said. I thought of our mother, chained to her round of duty, unable to leap free, no matter how shattering the attempt. If I had the money, I'd rent a studio. Dorothy glared greenly at me. I suggested she write while the kids were in school. But the dog, she said, the house, always some repairman coming, and me the only one home. So a couple on kids and husband. I hope they won't be too freaked out. Okay, this is called This Moving Ship Our Life, and it's really about transitions. You know, we make our own transitions and then we have to watch our children making theirs, and it's really quite overwhelming sometimes. This moving ship, our life. I said, I love you, darling, when Claire left with ancient suitcase, duffel full of shoes, left for a new life she could not yet see. I advised her where to walk, where not, which side of the street can save your life, and to be correct with everyone at work, even those she comes to deeply hate. She nodded patiently, swung one leg over the other, tucked her heavy hair behind her ears, and watched the ticket window as we waited for the train. She leaned her head on my arm. Where else could she have gone? Where else could I? Was there another path to walk back to my car, or any way not to imagine unspeakable things that happen? When someone sat down next to her, would she pretend to read or fall asleep, head inclining toward some other shoulder? And I have to just say, I have a proud moment about this poem because it's in iambic pentameter, and I hope you couldn't tell. So there. Okay, and then this is a new one. This is a new one, and I think Abby Wender is on this Zoom, and it was her lines that started the poem. She said, we were talking about pets, and she said, it cracked me up. She said, I never had a pet except children. It was the pause that did it. I just broke up. And so it's the first 2 lines of the poem. So the poem is called The Pulley. I never had a pet except children, fed and watered them, cheered for them when they surprised me, went into open water to pull them to safety. They changed from little lizards into squirrels, into horses blowing softly in my hand when I offered them food. We talked in the car, faces forward, about everything. Why clouds float so easily into the sky, whether turtles climb out of their shells. The children became experts, designing houses out of branch coral and clocks in the form of chariots. Now they fish from clouds, laugh in my sugar, sing to their unborn babes. this is, I write hardly any poems about my husband, but this is one. And it's called August, Race Point Beach, Provincetown. We walk the shell-less shore, looking for a gentle slope in. Warm breeze, cold water. 2 large seals cruise parallel to the beach, and I think of sharks. We go in fast, out faster, seaweed on our backs. The seals vanish. 2 young men cross the dunes, strip, submerge, stroll off. Whaleboat on the horizon, no spouts. Round blue sky, half moon. We walk companionably, noticing each other's bodies. Today, my hip isn't aching. The bugs aren't biting him. Down the beach, 2 currents meet uneasily on a sandbar, rippling in an extended line. 33 years with almost no fighting. He hands me a skipping stone. Now I'm going to progress to, well, I guess they're poems about getting older. And I'll just read a couple of those, and then a couple of COVID poems of different moods. So this first poem is called The Lesson. 6 rungs above the ground, night in heavy rain, eager to pull a clot of leaves from a blocked downspout, sopped, blinded on my 68th birthday in my old nightgown on a slick aluminum ladder, climbing to the downspout, midair in the drench, my feet slipped off. I went flying, caught myself, gasped, slammed flat against the flexing rungs, gutter cascading, spout still blocked, backed down, took the shining ladder back to the garage. I stopped teaching after 40 years. Well, I'm teaching adult ed, but that's different. This poem's called Off the Job. Just wanted to say I don't boss anymore. Keeping kids safe is so yesterday. No more birds forbidden to fly or fences containing whatever. Goodbye. My stop that voice is out of gas. Done crushing, done buckling up. Now I'll be the wild. Blame my bad behavior on the lion's breath. Hot growl in the grass. My sizzling ass. And this poem is to stand in for all the poems about physical ailments that have occurred. I wanted to title a book, The Age of Procedures, but my publisher said, under no circumstances will you ever be able to title a book that. But still, I think I could make a whole book on procedures. I really could. But anyway, here's one physical ailment poem called Dear Heart. For decades, I have vibrated to your flutter, your arrhythmic timpani. Every day I worry. Wishing will not make us well. My Greek cardiologist quotes Homer, commands me to live without fear, then implants a monitor in my breast. I can't see it, but I can feel it. Wishing will not make us well. A short metal warning under the skin, clocking your syncopated beats. My friend's husband, fit in body and mind, died at 60 of a massive heart attack. Wait, he said to her. So I have two poems here that it was striking to me as I was, looking through stuff, that sometimes I have a very dark view of the world. My view of human nature has not improved with age, I must say. And sometimes I have a very positive view. So first, the dark view, bad news first, and then the more positive view. So this is called The Eye of the Malign. The eye of the malign is a cold blue eye that stares from the heart of every scene. It cries when you cry and laughs when you laugh like no other eye that's ever been. The symmetries of evil, little sport and big, flash on the eye's cold screen. If you let it in to where you live, it will burn a hole without being seen. Sometimes it looks out from the waist of a dress on a woman in the dust, or it's on a ship too long at sea where the decking has turned to rust. Babies see it when they wake at night, if strangers come to their cries. Horses patient in a dusky field run off if it's in the sunrise. Which way you turn doesn't matter in the end. The eye of the malign is there. Its saving grace, if grace there is that its gaze goes everywhere. Just to mention something Wendy asked me before, this poem fell onto the page. It just fell onto the page pretty much as is. Why, I don't know, but there you go. Whereas, okay, so, and then the sort of, it's not really a companion, but the other view of life, maybe, which has more to do with being in the moment, which can be helpful sometimes. This is a prose poem. It's called Refraction. I go to Walden Pond to convert my solitude. It's dinner time, sun low to the water, trees in alpenglow. Believing there are no sharks, I let my legs dangle. On my back, slightly submerged, I watch the sun through a few inches of clear water as it wobbles and spreads its warm, diffused rays. Spears of light, flexing saddles of it. Each bubble reflects the light vibrating above my face. I'm floating in the refractions of the sky. Nothing comes to me. No giant creature opens its jaws on my back. I'm in the water, every cell cooling, my mind on fire with beauty. It's not a musical. No children show up to sing about how happy we are, and the wise old people don't dance on shore to welcome me home. But cradled by the water, I feel the beast retreat. Yes, I'm alone. And no, that show of light and color is not for me. It merely exists in implacable nature. Right now, I can float in it. And I'm going to close with 3 pandemic poems. This first one has to do with a bird sighting. You birders will know which bird. In the 4th month of the pandemic, up comes the huge tufted head, cocked to the side. She seems to stare at me from the top of the pine tree, round yellow eyes with thick brows, broad honey-colored chest. Eases out a wing, ducks her head under, rhythmically cleaning. I want to stay until dusk, watch her lethal, silent descent on prey in the field next door. Everything must still look okay through her eyes. Small me far below, pulling up my mask in the carless street. This is a sonnet, sort of. It doesn't do the meter, but it's got the rhyme scheme going. And it has a kind of argumentation feel to it. It's called Riddles. What blocks breathing to protect breath? What leaves a 3-day residue on a table? When do uncounted debts become unpayable? When am I close enough to death? How does fear attach itself to my hands, my feet? Why is the doctor's office more dangerous than home? How is heroism staying indoors alone? When do airplanes become obsolete? When do exhalations almost become visible? When can I hear only my voice in a choir? Why is the beach forbidden when most desired? Why must I learn to flee the invisible? Where does boredom cross paths with dread? When is my lover contagion instead? And the last one I'll leave you, it's a kind of a positive pandemic poem. And it's about I read one poem about Claire, one daughter, my other daughter's Emma. She and her husband and their dog are living with us now because he was in med school in Barbados and it's all virtual, so they came home. So I am going to, I left her husband out of the poem, so I promised him he'll have his own poem later, but not now. So my last poem is called Plague Reunion. Her voice a violin, hair a candle, something fierce, something small and air, brandishing a pencil. Emma's come home, middle of the night, with her little dog. Old stars stir, spark the big wind. As systems broke, she left her tropical isle, took a plane in mask and swim goggles, dog at her feet. Freezing air conditioning in a sanitized rental, dark drive home, speeders all around, cutting her off. When she stood at the foot of the stairs, our feet crept forward, but our heads hung back. We couldn't hug her. Shucking her shoes, she arrived cheerful, headed for bed, her dog hazy, waving his white flag. Thank you all so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It's really so sweet of you to be here. Really, really appreciate it. Thanks a lot. I like seeing
Bravo,
the
Can't
jazz hands and the claps. Sorry, Wendy, go ahead.
I was just going to thank you and compliment you on your very powerful work. It was a real treat to listen to. Not always a pleasure, sometimes heart-wrenching, but beautiful and valuable. Thank you so much for sharing it with us. I would like to open up to questions, comments, discussion. There are a lot of thank yous coming through in the chat box with a lot of compliments. Lovely, beautifully crafted. You rock, which I think I concur. Gorgeous, thank you, beautiful reading. Best hour of the week. So a lot of kudos there, many bravos and expressions of love. We do welcome you to unmute your mic if you would like to say something to Cammy verbally or ask some questions.
Feel free. Don't be shy.
And the thank yous and the kudos still coming through in the chat box. Thank you so much. Gorgeous, lovely and true. Oh, here's a question. Was it a heron?
No. Anybody have an idea of what the bird was?
An owl, a hawk.
Yeah, an owl. What kind of an owl? This is
Great
actually
horned
good for
owl.
you. What's that?
yellow
Pam?
eye.
A great horned owl.
A great horned owl is what it was. Yes, that's absolutely right. Yep.
That was a really beautiful poem.
Cammy, back to the family poems. Were you able to write those very honest and scary and powerful poems about your parents while they were alive?
Yes, actually, it's a very funny, there are a couple of funny stories about that, Ellen. Thanks. So my mom was really very, deeply into alcoholism by the time I finished the book, but she was very proud, that I had written a book, and she wanted to come to everything. And I was just going, oh my God. So I said to her, Mom, it's kind of a book about our family. And, some of the poems are about you, and, they have to do with your drinking sometimes. And she said, yeah, I know that. I mean, you have to write what's real for you. And then sometime later, she said to me this perfect thing. She said, I've read your book 3 times, and I don't really understand any of it, but I'm very proud of you. And I thought, I don't know whether that was just the ultimate tactician, that was my mother's specialty, was to figure out ways of saying things to people they didn't want to hear, or of being in a conversation that was very difficult. So I said, Mom, that's so nice. Thank you very much. And that was the entire conversation. My father had died sometime earlier, and I wrote a lot of them while he was living, but by the time the book came out, he was dead. Yeah, and that would have been very hard because there was no mental slippage for him, and he would have been completely on top of it. I think my mom was a little bit in a fog, and so it wasn't really going to be a problem. But it would not have been a pretty picture. I think maybe 2 that I was enabled to write them more by my father's death. I mean, honestly, the whole family kind of went, oh, thank God. It sounds horrible, but it's kind of true. Sorry, I can hear you laughing, Dorothy. Any other questions?
I had a question for you, Cammy. This is Abby, which is, have you ever taken, I love that story that you gave about Tennyson using something he'd written 30 years earlier or whatever. Have you ever taken a piece of an older poem and slipped it into a newer one? Have you experimented with that?
Yeah, sometimes, that statement that you look it up online and they don't know, nobody knows who said it, kill all your darlings, kill all your darlings. So I have my darlings, and sometimes they do find their way into things, or sometimes there's just a line in a poem that I treasure, and I might junk the rest of the thing and then hope that I can find some place for it to fit in. Like the skipping stone in the poem about Provincetown, I knew that there was a skipping stone in that poem, but I didn't know who was holding it or who was throwing it or when it was going to appear. So the skipping stone kind of skipped its way around in my mind as I was working on the poem until and originally I had what it usually is the case. I hand him the skipping stone, but then I thought, no, that's too, girl giving it to boy, no good. So then I had him hand it to me, and I thought it made a better poem that way.
It makes a beautiful ending, actually, of
Thank you.
shared experience somehow for the long marriage.
I mean, I'm sure that's true for there are a lot of poets on the line here where you have something is going to go somewhere. And I always took courage from Tennyson that he held on to things for a really long time. Mm-hmm. Don't ever throw anything away.
That's the Yankee in us.
Yeah, that too.
That's great. Too. Thank you. Beautiful reading.
Thank you so much, Abby.
Cam, I have a question.
Yeah.
First of all, I love you so much. You're just like such a cool sister. Just awesome, amazing, beyond reality. totally beyond reality.
I got you, darling.
And I'm so glad this was recorded, Wendy. And I'm always after you, Cam, to record your poems because
I know.
you're so beautiful, and the inflection and the pacing and the diction and the feel and the tone and the pitch of your voice, all of it is just sublime. So since there's a lot of poets here, I just was wondering how you all feel about recording yourself reading your own poems, because from my point of view, I would just love to have recordings of all of you reading all your poems.
Well, and that's the composer, the musician in you speaking, you know, because it is a musical form, poetry, and yet we don't often think of it that way. It's so much better to hear poems aloud. Most of the time, I just love it so much more. It's so much easier to feel it if you're really looking at somebody saying it, and you can hear the music in the verse much better sometimes aloud as well. So I love your idea, and I keep ignoring you, but it's not, you know, I think it's a good idea. Is any poets here just, I mean, without somebody asking you to record your book, have you ever recorded a bunch of poems just because you want them to be there in that way? Most poets are kind of modest. I mean, we love to be asked to read, but you know, we're not, a lot of people are not, they don't put themselves forward too much in that way. Lloyd?
One of the most touching experiences I ever had was that I was asked by the Perkins School of the Blind to record a whole book. And I went over there and I recorded the book. And I thought that was a really extraordinary experience. And I love reading aloud. I like reading my own poems aloud. I like reading other people's poems aloud. Yeah, I you know, I like being asked to read because I really do enjoy it. But that was a very special experience.
Did it change your view of any of the poems to read them aloud?
I think not, because I kind of hear them in my head anyway. But it wasn't a chance to get my poems to people who couldn't read them. So that was extraordinary. I like having my poems set to music too.
Yeah, this is Augusta and I are having this, you know, she got 2 poems of mine that she's put to music, and I'm so excited about it. It's just blowing my mind to think about a chorus singing my words. I can't even really compute what that will feel like, but it is a very musical form, and I'm very excited. Very excited to hear that.
You haven't heard it yet?
I've heard, I don't know what you call it, Augusta, but I've heard a computer version of it. Do you know what I mean? Not actual voices, but I've heard the music, sort of, what is it? Is it a synthesized, what is it, Augusta?
Yeah, it's basically a MIDI recording using computer sounds. So the violins sound tinny and the voices sound canned and so on and so forth. But you can get a sense of the notes and rhythms and the sound and the form and the flow.
So I've heard that, but I think it's not going to hold a candle to hearing the real thing. I'm so thrilled.
I think it would be great just to do some promotional work for my sisters. If you guys send the link to that performance to everyone that's in this call, in case they might like to see it or hear its results. I think it's going to be
everybody who's on this call. I have to really.
Well, I think you could rely on Wendy maybe just to keep the link going once that the Kennedy Center, you know, or isn't it at the Kennedy Center?
No, it's in Washington at the National Cathedral.
National Cathedral once it's up on the website or whatever, then it's easy for everyone to go to if they want to. That's just my promotional message, pardon me.
If you
I'm
have a
kind of
link
get-
that you'd like to share, you can certainly put it in the chat box and everybody can click through from there. So if you do have something that you're willing to share publicly, please feel free to put it in the chat box.
It's actually there already.
Good. And, you know, Augusta's website or mine would also do you. But you know what? I feel like I'm so floored that my sisters are here and supporting me in this way. So I'm very, very appreciative of that. Thank you. And thanks to everybody so much for coming. It's wonderful to see your name and or your face. I don't know if anybody has a last word that they're aching to say. And again, Wendy, thank you so much. And thanks to the library.
Thank you, Cammy. Thank you for joining us, and thank you to our wonderful audience for joining us as well. It was a very beautiful reading, and I think you made many people's day. So thank you.
Thanks.
And again, there will be a recording which you can access from stockbridgelibrary.org, and join us on future Wednesday afternoons at 1 o'clock for poetry. And we will be having a narrative medicine through poetry series coming up in April, and that will be held in the evenings. And you can look on our website for information about that program as well. Thank you, Cammy. Thank you, everyone. Have a lovely afternoon.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much.